Hello and welcome to Founded, a Pleasant Phantom production, where we find the stories you missed in history class. I'm Tori Phantom, and here to listen to me info dump about the people no one has thought about since the 19th century is Gwenna Lathland.
Hi. So, last week we left off just about to talk about the Sugar Act of 1763. Yes?
Yeah, we keep ending there, yeah.
Okay. And so this week we have made it to the Sugar Act of 1763. Yeah?
Kinda.
Okay.
Kinda. What we're doing is we're going to set the scene for 1763 and introduce some main characters who you'll be hearing a lot about as we dive deeper into post-war, pre-war Boston. But
Post 7 Years' War, pre-Revolutionary War Boston.
Yes.
Got it.
But first, I do have some questions for you. It's a pop quiz.
No, I don't like when you pop quiz me.
I need to get a pop quiz button.
Do I have a riot button yet?
No. But maybe, are you going to riot about it?
Yes.
Let's start a riot. Very Boston of you. Okay, so what was the rallying cry of the Patriots? Like, what phrase did you learn was the reason for revolution?
So the first thing that pops into my head is probably because of modern times, and it's the "Don't tread on me." But I don't think that's probably not right. No,
it's not the answer I'm looking for.
That's not the right. So if it isn't snake boot,
it's a four-word phrase. It's what were the colonists mad about?
Representation.
You got it.
I got it.
You got it. Hooray.
I only said it like 20 times last episode, so I hope I friggin' got it.
So, next question.
Yeah.
Who coined that phrase and or popularized it?
Nope, I'm going to stop you right there. There's no and or. I didn't know the first part. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a trick question. That's what we're going to get to today.
Yeah. That's what
I knew you were going to know.
There's always a trick question at the end, Tori.
That's the fun part of pop quizzes. For me.
All right,
I'm not the one taking them.
No taxation without representation.
We'll get there. So we're starting back in 1760 again. And we're gonna introduce a couple of the main characters from Boston that will be coming up again and again.
Okay.
So the first person you're going to hear about, who you've heard about many times now, is Thomas Hutchinson, who became the lieutenant governor in 1758. But in 1760, Francis Bernard becomes royal governor.
And Massachusetts,
King George, yes. And King George III takes the throne.
Okay.
And Hutchinson becomes the Chief Justice of the court.
Okay.
At the same time, he's the lieutenant governor. And he was also the judge of probate and a member of the council. So he held, like just every position a person could at the same time.
How did that guy get that many titles?
You could associate Hutchinson with the word nepotism.
Oh, Nepo babies.
It feels appropriate.
We love Nepo babies. We don't love Nepo babies.
No.
I will seize every opportunity to tease a Nepo baby. Let's go. What Tommy boy do?
So, there's definitely no conflict of interest in all those positions being held at once.
None whatsoever.
So we are going to start with a little mini bio.
I am just now imagining how awful it is to have a probate judge also be the lieutenant governor. Oh.
And a chief justice on the court. Yeah, and a chief justice on the Supreme Court there, and a member of the council for the entire. Yeah, he did a lot.
Right.
Okay. So our Tommy boy was born in 1711 to a wealthy family.
Oh, so he was not like a young guy at sort of the start of this. Like, I often, when I think of the founding fathers, when I think of the guys I know, I always think of their portraits, which were typically painted toward the end of their careers, toward the end of their lives in some cases. So in my head, all of this stuff is unfolding around a bunch of old guys. Not that 60s is necessarily old, but around a bunch of elderly senior citizen types, when some of these guys were in their 20s and 30s. Not Thomas. Thomas was in his 50s and 60s, but...
Yeah, he was one of the older folks at the beginning of the revolution. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I always find really important to, the history cards I make. I always include what year they were born because it kind of gives context to where they were at in their life experience, right? Because the way we experience things when we're in our 20s versus our 30s versus our 40s, like that's going to change the way we view the world and the way that we are making decisions, right?
Well,
We've had different
I
life
think it goes
experiences.
to show a lot about how important all of these topics were, how forward the communication was, is because if you look at someone who has been on one standing in one little patch of political belief, for them to shift, not just like scooch over a little bit, but to completely swap to no, maybe the king has got it wrong. Maybe this imperialism thing ain't working for us. To watch someone do that in their 50s or 60s, I don't want to make it an ageist conversation, but there's a lot of experience that they've already had that also has to align with no, I think we should radically upend everything we've been doing so far. Like that says a lot.
Right. It does. It does. And I mean, when you consider it too, in terms of the revolution, all of the colonists in the beginning, well, most of them wanted to reconcile. They didn't want independence. That took some time to get to. So this was a long time coming and forming and changing opinions. And so our Thomas Hutchinson, he never changed his mind. So the thing with Thomas Hutchinson, though, is he's a complicated fellow, and I find it incredibly frustrating how hard it is to find actual books about him. So I have read a lot about him in the books I read about other people or about certain events because he's there.
He's always like
up.
introduced as a tertiary character.
But, yes, but he is so integral to Boston in this time, and I cannot find a single book specifically about him. So I'm still searching. We'll see what I find. And so he graduated Harvard at the age of 16. And then Hutchinson entered politics in 1737. He was elected as a selectman. Don't worry, I did bring you a definition.
Yeah. What's a selectman?
Selectmen carried out and enforced the votes of town meetings, and in addition, they had authority over town finances, care of the poor, schools, admission of new residents into the town, public works, land regulation, local defense, and appointment of other town officials that weren't elected positions. So just like a little.
So it was like mayor plus.
Yes, and it was selectmen, so there was like many people. It's kind of like a committee.
Mayoral council plus.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so this was his entrance into politics, 1737. And he actually played a major role in the Albany Congress, which I am not going to go deep into because then we will totally derail. But that was in 1754, where they were trying to negotiate a treaty with native tribes and come up with a way for colonies to collaborate to solve common problems. So this was kind of the first time that the colonies were trying to come together and to act as more of a united front where, hey, we do have common issues, we can work together. So this was 1754. And at this Albany Congress, he was a huge supporter of Benjamin Franklin's plan for colonial union. So now we have a connection between Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Hutchinson. And Franklin
Thomas Hutchinson, he was a complicated being because while he was, at the time, he ends up a lieutenant. Does he end up a governor, right?
He will end up a governor.
So he ends up a governor, but he was on the side of the colonies.
He always was. Now, the reason that Thomas Hutchinson can seem like a bad guy is because he did stay loyal to the crown, but that doesn't mean he didn't care about his people and his home, right? Like, he is from the colonies. And so he's a very complicated fellow, as most people are. So, but we've connected Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Hutchinson, and Franklin is going to come up again later, okay? But fun fact about this Albany Congress, it actually modeled the way that colonists would come together in the future during the Stamp Act Congress, which we will cover eventually, and the First Continental Congress, which you've heard of at least.
Yeah. So many congresses. I
So-
fully admit, I did not realize how many times we congressed before we ended up with Congress.
Yeah. So Thomas Hutchinson, who held every title a man could apparently, he actually didn't understand why people might not like him. Now, he was actually very well liked. By 1763, the year we're moving towards, he was one of the most popular men in Boston. Okay. Most people really loved him. He was kind of like a local celebrity. Okay. But he did have people who were not for him at all. And they saw how he was in every position, and they saw it as a conflict of interest, and they saw it as a problem. And he was very kind of naive because he really felt like he was doing the best he could for his people and in the public service. So he didn't understand why his public service would be seen as ambition and covetousness, and was quoted to have said that he felt suffered more than anyone for, quote, foolish internal quarrels. So he was just the victim, okay?
It's just witch hunts. The witch hunts everywhere. They're
Yeah.
hunting the witches.
Yeah,
Which,
actually,
honestly, this wasn't too terribly far away from the witch hunt era, but whatever.
Yeah, his aunt was excommunicated during that time. So, fun fact. And
It always ties
While-
back to witches, y'all.
honestly, and while he was a loyalist, he did still care about his home and his people, and he was also very non-confrontational. So Hutchinson,
Here's what I'll say about generally speaking, Bostonians. They love Boston. They will run their mouth about Boston.
Yeah.
No one else is allowed to run their mouth about Boston.
yeah, Boston is like a big brother energy, I think.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, well, I can make fun of you, but no one else can. Like, that's
No
the
one
vibe.
else can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Sidebar. While you're explaining all of this, I have been paying attention, but also I have been pulling in my bibliophageness.
okay.
I have a present for you.
You do.
There is a book called Prelude to Purgatory, Thomas Hutchinson in Provincial Massachusetts Politics, 1760 to 1770, by Malcolm Freeburg. You will have to use interlibrary loan because there are only a couple copies. One of them is at Cameron University in Lawton, Oklahoma. The other one is at the New York Public Library. So you'll have to use your interlibrary loan and have a little patience. But I did locate you a book.
That's
about
what
Thomas
I
Hutchinson.
have seen a couple of these books that are impossible to find. So perhaps on Bibliophage, you teach me about
No.
interlibrary loans.
I
You
will
teach me
explain
about-
interlibrary loans.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm not expecting you to read the Thomas Hutchinson book.
I'm not reading the Thomas Hutchinson. Okay, so anyway, now there is a book available
Awesome.
because you
That's
said you wanted a
exciting.
book. Okay, so
Okay.
anyway, back on to what you do know about Thomas Hutchinson from not that book.
Right, exactly. So he was a loyalist. He very much loved the crown. He loved the motherland, and he loved his home, and he cared about his people. And so he was very non-confrontational. He was not one to want to get into it with people, right? And
Yeah.
so he was very passive in his opposition of things. So if he disagreed with the crown, he was very passive about that. He would like write a moderately worded letter, not strongly, it was moderately worded. And so
It's just, I don't like it either, but what do you want me to do?
literally that's something that he has said before. Like, you know, sometimes that's just how it goes, you know, like
we have to do stuff we all don't like. Thomas, aren't
Yes.
you rich? Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about right now.
oh, yeah, this isn't about me in that way.
It's not about me.
So
Kings do what they want, right? Dang
yeah,
it.
and he's the king. So he's paying my bills. So when the word of the Revenue Act, such as the Sugar Act and Stamp Act, made their way to Boston, right? Because they would hear the rumors of these acts before they would hear that they were actually going to take effect. And so when he heard about the Sugar Act, he asked, is this not taxation without representation?
Is Thomas Hutchinson the one who came up with the words taxation without representation?
Nope. So he did use them though. He did use them, and I feel like that's
so. He was a governor. He was a rather effete opposer of the crown, and he was a plagiarist. Got it.
I mean, it was a very well used phrase, right? But I felt it important to include that he did use this phrase because it is very easy to just look at anyone who was on the British side as the villain, as the enemy.
Yeah.
But they all had their own stories too that led them to feeling the way that they did. And that's something that we'll do an entire episode on, of the fear of declaring independence from even our founding fathers that we, were taught were these heroes, right? There was a lot of fear and unknown in that.
I'm sure that there were a ton of common folk, working class folk, and governing class folk who were like, no, we don't like what the Brits are doing. But what are we supposed to do? They have all the boats. They have all the guns. They have all the military. What do you want us to do against the largest military might in the world? You want us to fight that? Screw that. I mean, they're wrong, but I'm just going to have to bend over. I don't know about you.
Yeah. And not just what are we supposed to do, but what happens to us if we do. And even if we win, then what, right? Like, there's so many layers.
Well, even in that, I was fascinated in the Rebellion 1776. The author included this cute little dialogue between children of, well, if we're going to be independent, who's going to be our king? Oh, you know what? That would actually probably be the default setting to most people. If we're going to put down one king, then we need to pick a new king, obvi.
Right. Exactly. Anyway. This is, So I did feel it was important to include that he did say no taxation without representation because he did care about the colonists' well-being. He just thought it a different way to meet their needs. Yeah, there's a different approach. Yes. And change is hard for people. Right. Yeah. And so even though he did moderately speak out in favor of his constituents, the people he was representing.
Turns out people have not liked a fence sitter since day one of the system that would become the United States.
Yeah, so eventually he did become a target of the Sons of Liberty and Patriots, and but at the same time, he still served his people. So you've heard of like the Boston Massacre, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a time where Boston could have started a riot, but Thomas Hutchinson, there was a lot of civil unrest, and Thomas Hutchinson walked his fancy butt down to where this unrest is happening, and he calmed the townspeople, and he promised that there would be justice. And to prove that, he coordinated to get the British regulars, the Redcoats, who are currently occupying the city at this point, he got them out of the city. And so he still was serving his people, just not in the way that most people wanted him to. Yeah. And so here's the fun thing, too, though, is after the Boston Massacre, he sent a letter to the Crown. He sent a letter to London resigning as lieutenant governor. He said, I don't think I'm fit for this. I don't think that I could do this job. However, at the time that his letter was on a boat to London, there was another letter from London on a boat on its way to Hutchinson, promoting him to royal governor. He got a royal commission.
2 ships passed in the night. One said, I quit. The other one effectively said, no, you don't.
Yes, he got a royal commission. They literally denied his resignation. They said no. They were like, no, you're the royal governor now. So it didn't go well for him from there.
And I wouldn't imagine.
Spoiler
he didn't want
alert.
the job in the first place.
Yeah. When he eventually got recalled, he was replaced with a general. So like a military guy. But he did still serve his people, and he calmed chaos many times. And he also became the unwanted center of attention many more times, which will come up later. So now you have the background for this character you are going to be hearing in much of the chaos
poor
stories.
Thomas.
Yeah, poor little guy.
Poor Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like I think another way to show the way that he actually did love his home and his people is in 1763, before the Sugar Act, right? He thought, okay, the war is over. Things are good. Things are going to get better. I have some free time. I'm going to start writing the entire history of colonial Massachusetts. I am going to write a history book because who better to do it than me, who is grown up here, who is involved in the government, who loves this place more than anyone. I'm going to start writing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So he wrote like 3 volumes of this history book, by the way. I can't get my hands on them. But the other thing about Thomas Hutchinson is he did have a nemesis.
We love a nemesis.
Yes, he had a nemesis whose name was James Otis Jr. Have you heard of him?
No.
Okay. So one of the reasons
tell me about JOJ here.
Well, he's going to have a bit of a shorter bio. He's going to have some stories involved in his bio, but his entire biography is a bit shorter because of unfortunate circumstances. Yeah. Many of them. And
that's a Toryism for he cacks it kind of young.
Yeah. And so, James Otis Jr. was born in 1725, it's about 13, 14 years after Thomas Hutchinson. And he was born to a prominent politician, so he's a wealthy guy too. And he also graduated from Harvard. And he was actually the brother to Mercy Otis, who is important. We'll talk way more about her later, but she actually is one of the first American women authors of political and social issues for the public. Like she was essentially like a journalist.
She was an early version of a lady journalist.
Yes. Yes.
We love women journalists.
We do. We love women. And so her brother, James Otis Jr.
Mercy's brother. Yeah.
Mercy's brother. He worked as a lawyer for a long time. And then in 1761, he gave a 5-hour-long speech where he is credited with popularizing the term no taxation without representation. He was elected.
Mercy's brother came up with no taxation without representation, which was later co-opted by Mercy's brother's nemesis, Thomas Hutchinson.
Yeah, kind of. And
okay, is that why they had beef?
Well, no, that's not why they had beef. And the thing is that we can't say for certain that he
my work.
we can't say for certain that he created the term himself, but he did popularize it. So that is, I won't say he definitely created it, but he's credited with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, man. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And so in
it's always been an issue trying to like trademark and source phrases because I mean,
especially when it's a good one. Right.
Yeah.
But it's a good one like that where it could really become a battle cry. It's like everyone's using it, you know? And so in 1761, he was elected to the legislature, the provincial court of Massachusetts. He was the mentor and eventual bestie of Samuel Adams. He was eventually elected as a member of the Massachusetts House of Representatives. And in 1769, he was beat up by the British. Which,
to be fair, a whole bunch of people were beat up by the British. But
yeah, but this one was a little bit more personal and likely left him with what was probably a traumatic brain injury. So we're going to do a little story time here. So James Otis Jr. was one of our many founding fathers who really loved to start newspapers and write opinion pieces on people they disagreed with, which is the nicest way of saying.
Okay, so just to reset the listeners and the viewers. So back in this time, before TikTok, before YouTube, before gossip rags, they would start newspapers or publish their letters in other people's newspapers just to talk trash about each other.
Yes.
If you're a fan of Hamilton the musical, Hamilton did that to John Adams, yes?
Yes.
Just ran his mouth.
Right. Well, that's in the Adams administration when Hamilton drops that book from the top ledge. That is actually lending itself to the 54-page pamphlet that Hamilton wrote about how awful John Adams was. He dropped the book.
They would spend their time, effort, energy, and this was not free. You had to pay the printer to make these. Now, the printer would charge for people to buy them, but you still had to put some up front.
The funniest part about it is that they wouldn't even write under their own names half the time. Like, there are known aliases. Like, there's up to, I think Samuel Adams had something like over 50 aliases that he would write under, and he would like argue with himself in the paper. He would write from multiple perspectives. Like, this was, they really had nothing else to do. What did we do before the internet? This. We did this.
So anyway, next time you're watching like some niche tea or some, Cliff Notes on the TikTok, just know you are not the first to enjoy other people's drama. Yeah. We've been doing it since at least the 18th century.
Literally.
Actually, well before that.
Well before that. Yeah. And so the thing with this moment
about people, go ahead.
So James Otis Jr., by 1769, he's a member of the Sons of Liberty. He is a part of the resistance movement, okay? Like, he is in the weeds with anti-British sentiment, okay? And so he has wrote a lot of opinion pieces, and then he hears that there's these British regulars, these loyalists, they're talking smack about him. And they're saying a lot of stuff about him. And so he writes that he has a natural right, and if he can get no other satisfaction, to break his head. His head being that of John Robinson, who was a British soldier, okay? And so there was multiple British guys that had essentially just been talking bad about James Otis Jr., and he is like, I have the right to break all your heads, like, at me, bro. Like, let's go. Let's fight. Okay, so he requests a meeting with all of the British folks talking smack about him. One whom offered a faint apology. He's like, sorry, I guess. Right? One who called him, and this is, I love insults of the 18th century. He called him a poltroon and a scoundrel. And scoundrel was like a serious insult back then, okay?
Yeah.
And so what does Otis do? He goes to the British haunt. He goes to this coffee shop where he knows that this dude, John Robinson, is waiting for him. Okay. So they start arguing, and Otis is all, cash me outside. How about that? Okay.
Yeah.
They're like, let's take it outside. And as they went to leave, Robinson tried to take Otis by the nose. Which apparently,
are we talking like literally?
Yes, which apparently was like a huge insult. He tries to take him by the nose.
I would also find it. Do not touch my face. That is offensive.
Just like two nostrils. Like, just come here, buddy.
Nope.
Yeah,
we fighting now. Got it.
So exactly. So a scuffle begins, and then Robinson hits Otis with a sword or a cane, some sort of bludgeoning object, and it was a bad blow to his head, like immediate, blood. Okay.
Yeah.
And then things escalated. And then, because they are at this British haunt, he's swarmed and he's beaten. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's bad.
What you do to one, you do to us all. That's, yeah.
Yes. So he is just very badly beaten. And so a week later, his bestie, Samuel Adams, wrote a story in the paper about it. Yeah. That really propagandized the situation. He was really good at that. Because Samuel wasn't there. He wasn't there. But he had very detailed account of what had happened. We can
infer some details. It's fine.
Yeah, and the details he inferred was that the British wanted to assassinate him. Like the British were planning to assassinate James Otis Jr. They're chanting, kill him, kill him. And he also said that Robinson had instigated the whole thing. So we have, it's like the spin room. The newspaper is like the modern day spin room for politicians, where they go after their debates to try to spin the story. And, that was the newspaper back then. And so that's what had happened. Okay. And so James Otis Jr. was never the same after this. And so he would have moments where he was totally lucid, and then he would have moments where he was really out of it, and his opinions, because he was always known as a very fiery orator. Like, he gave incredible speeches. He was so active in politics. People really respected him. And then he is this big name, this leader in the resistance movement here. And now he will sometimes be very revolutionary. And now he's sometimes very much like, I don't know why I ever spoke out against the British. I regret it. Right. So he's he's really having a hard time. However, one thing that I think is also really important is that his friends stood by his side through everything, and they would defend him and they would remind them like what happened to him, and like Samuel Adams, John Adams, all those buddies, they stood by his side for forever. Okay.
Yeah.
And so this happened in 1769, and he was actually reelected to the House in 1771, but he was still really struggling mentally. And so he couldn't play too much of a role. And so his friends would like support him, and they would make sure they were there for him, and they would help him through these things. But they also weren't surprised when he turned into this fiery person again who, you know, you couldn't really pin where his opinion was in that moment. And so he was a very, very important part of the beginning. And then but
unfortunately, circumstances led him to not being able to play as much of a role through the revolution and the war itself.
And the end of his story is one of the most wild, okay? Because James Otis Jr. went to dinner one night at John Hancock's in 1783. And he kind of had an episode, that's kind of like how they referred to it, where he was kind of having a hard time. So his friends brought him home, like his friends and family, they brought him home so he could have his familiar surroundings and kind of relax. And he's leaning against this chimney, and there's a thunderstorm, and the lightning goes through the chimney, and he dies of lightning strike after dinner at John Hancock's. Lightning strike through a chimney.
I swear, why are so many historical figures like hamsters? Y'all can't just die. You have to die in the weirdest, strangest, most unbelievable ways.
Like, it's what a story. Like, lightning strike through a chimney after dinner with John Hancock. So
what do you mean John Adams and Thomas Jefferson both died on July 4th? Together, and this guy lightning beefs it. They're hamsters. They all die like hamsters. There's no regular way for a hamster to die. There is no regular way for a founding father to die. That's what I've decided. Also, I would like to point hamsters.
Yes,
we're making that a t-shirt. All of that. You never once mentioned how Lightning Boy was actually Hutchinson's nemesis.
Yeah, I was building suspense. I needed to build the suspense. Okay, so
but then you broke it when you told us he died by lightning.
They're all dead. Okay, they all lived hundreds of years ago. In none of these stories is anyone still going to be alive. So,
all right.
Now that we know who these two people are, it is time to learn.
Hamsters, I'm sure.
Yes, it is time to learn why these hamsters had beef. So, in 1760, Hutchinson and James Otis Jr. went from working together on some things and at least being like friendly to being enemies. Okay, mega beef. So you remember I said that Otis argued a case for 5 hours. He did this 5-hour argument, 1761.
That's where he said the no taxation without representation thing. Okay.
So he was arguing against the writs of assistance, which, you remember we said at the time, royal governor is Francis Bernard. So Francis Bernard used what's called the writs of assistance to enforce a long dormant tax on molasses from 1733. So the Molasses Act imposed a tax on molasses, sugar, and rum on non-British imports to the American colonies. And the main goal of this act was to monopolize the American sugar market so the British West Indies could compete with the French colonies that produced more. Americans didn't like this. They protested. They said that the British West Indies could not keep up with the demand. And when their cries went ignored, They skirted the issue through smuggling. I've said, I think every episode that the colonists really love smuggling. This was a big part of it, right?
It was just a little side hobby. Just a little sugar on the side. Don't look in that barrel. You don't want to know what's in that barrel.
Exactly. And so when the writs of assistance, when that becomes a thing, James Otis Jr. at this point has started pro bono representing Boston merchants because
against this whole like writs of assistance that they're weaponizing.
Yes.
The writs of assistance were how did the writs of assistance reenact, basically revive the Molasses Act?
So the writs of assistance were warrants that allowed British customs officials to search any place, anytime for evidence of smuggling. Okay. So they just kind of had an open warrant to search any ship, anywhere, any person, any shop, anytime they wanted to look for the smuggling so that they could enforce the Molasses Act. Okay. And so wait, James Otis Jr.
To be fair, people were not a huge fan of the government arbitrarily deciding that their agents could just walk in and dig through everything looking for evidence of things that weren't supposed to be without cause or investigation or warrant. They could just coldly walk in and decide that person, I mean, barrel was clearly illegal and remove it without like explanation or reason.
Yeah.
And they were mad about that.
I mean, well, I mean, if you think about like the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it's basically a trauma response to Britain. Why do you think of the Bill of Rights? There is literally an amendment about unlawful search and seizure. It's almost like,
it's almost like we've had this happen before. We didn't like it, and we set some protections around the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so 1760. This is happening. Got it.
Yeah,
well, 1761, but
yes. And so, what's interesting about this 5-hour speech is later on, John Adams. You've heard of him, most notable for being husband of Abigail Adams.
Abigail Adams, yeah.
He went on to say that the American Revolution didn't start at Lexington and Concord. It started with this speech.
The speech that James Otis Jr. made against the writs of assistance of the government deciding to investigate what they decided was illegal.
Yes. And so, in this speech, he denounced the British King, Parliament, and the entire nation as oppressors of American colonies. Quote, "It appears to me the worst instrument of arbitrary power, the most destructive of English liberty that was ever found in an English law book." Okay. So he does this 5-hour speech. What does this have to do with Hutchinson? I'm so glad you asked. Hutchinson was one of the chief justices that was sitting on the bench that he was arguing this to. Why is that important? Again, I am so glad you asked. You're asking the right questions.
Yeah. I'm here with you.
So this was important because Hutchinson was not qualified for the position of Chief Justice where he
was a Nepo baby?
Yeah. But do you know who was qualified for that position?
Was it Otis?
It was James Otis Sr.
Oh.
It was his dad.
Otis's dad.
His dad.
Got it.
Who was a prominent politician and had worked in government and was a lawyer and had the qualifications, right? Like Hutchinson never passed the bar. He never sat for the bar.
Yeah.
He didn't know anything about the law.
He was elected a selectman.
He was a self-educated lawyer, I suppose. He wasn't really a lawyer, but he was a politician.
He did go to Harvard, but
right. But he didn't go to Harvard to be a lawyer. So he did not have the qualifications. And before he was appointed as the Chief Justice, James Otis Jr. actually talked to Hutchinson about it. And Hutchinson promised that he was not even interested in the position. He wasn't going to take that position. He had no interest in being a Chief Justice. However, when the powers that be offered this position to Hutchinson, he was like, well, but what about these other people? Haven't you considered? They were like, no, like we promise, they assured him that he was the one they wanted and all other possibilities had already been considered. And so Hutchinson took the position. And yeah, and
which I could see how that looks kind of sketch.
it looks super sketch. And you can also kind of see how the way that the political world worked then. If you're offered a position, there's going to be consequences if you don't accept it too, right?
Yeah.
And so he accepts it, but he had promised James Otis Jr. like, I'm not even interested. And then suddenly he takes it, right? And now here James Otis Jr. is arguing against the writs of assistance and the Crown, who just so happened to appoint the wrong person to this job.
Right.
And so after Hutchinson had accepted this position as a Chief Justice, Otis immediately started doing the thing we know everyone loved to do, where he was just like, yeah, I'll write about you in the newspaper.
Gossip papers.
And so their beef will come up in more stories. I promise you that, because they were just against each other. Okay. Like, to the point that Hutchinson said of Otis that when he was elected, right, when he became the Chief Justice, that Otis swore revenge and he vowed to set the province in flames. And Hutchinson wrote this in his History of Massachusetts book. And then Otis, he had said of Hutchinson that he would do all the mischief he could in government and would set the province aflame. So both of them think the other one is going to burn everything down. And I think their feud helped to burn everything down. Personally, that's my opinion. And so they just very much were against each other while being for their people in wildly different ways. Okay. But this speech that Otis gave wasn't the first time that colonists had spoken out against the British and their taxes. You'll remember, right? I had mentioned Thomas Hutchinson connected to Benjamin Franklin, right?
Right.
Imagine me with pictures of all these founding fathers and like the red tape connecting them.
Right.
Everyone is everywhere. So in
everywhere.
In 1751, right? So this is a decade prior to this famous speech from James Otis Jr. Ben Franklin had also talked about these kinds of things. And he had said that it is understood to be the right of Englishmen to be taxed only by their consent. The colonies had no representation in Parliament, so to compel payments under the circumstances amounted to treating them as conquered people and not as true British subjects. And he was really describing the ways that the colonies had already paid taxes in a way, because trade was strictly regulated in favor of British merchants, and Americans bought their goods, which filled their pockets. And so he said, was that not tantamount to taxing the colonists themselves? And we need to pause
real quick right here, because we need to define what taxes were and why the colonists weren't technically paying taxes the way that Benjamin Franklin is complaining about.
So, you know, the phrase I keep dropping, the salutary neglect.
Yes, you've said it several times, but I don't fully grasp salutary neglect.
Okay, so essentially what that means is that the American colonies were self-governing. So sure, they had the royal governors, but they also had their local assemblies and their local governments and their local legislatures with colonists serving, right? And those local legislatures were setting taxes on the colonies themselves, which they could consent to. They know who they've elected into these houses. So basically, they know where their money is going.
If you lived in Massachusetts, you paid Massachusetts taxes, which were used to improve Massachusetts, not shipped to Britain.
Right. They're not.
So we're cool with
Britain.
Those taxes.
Yes, they
but
were
the taxes
so cool.
We're not cool with.
Yeah. Yes, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people, because you just hear the phrase "no taxation without representation," and I think because you hear it so often, your brain just goes "no taxation." No. That no representation part is so important because they wanted to pay taxes for the public good. They just wanted to say in what those taxes were, why they were there, and what they went to. They just wanted to have a representation in their government. And we'll get to later when Britain is like, well, you have virtual representation. So that's a whole other thing. But at this point, the reason he is saying...
basically what Ben Franklin was saying is, We're cool with paying taxes to our colonies where we know where our dollars are going and how they're helping. We are not cool with being forced to purchase only British stuff. So all of our money gets scooped up, shipped back across the ocean, and y'all use it for whatever. Meanwhile, we're not even getting the good end of the deal because y'all stuff is more expensive.
Yes. And they were somewhat okay with some of the British goods, right? But the thing is that where the tax is like a direct tax on things you're buying or, whatever that case may be, they were paying customs duties because of this monopolization. So if things are coming from other places, they're paying these heavier duties, which was to discourage merchants from doing trade with places that weren't British owned, right?
Which would super duper suck for anyone trying to get coffee.
Right.
It wasn't super popular at the time, but it's only at the time, all of the coffee in the world was completely controlled by the Spanish Empire.
Yeah. And so what Ben Franklin is saying is like, you guys are so controlling.
Like I know.
Well, I will figure that out. And we will have an infographic up about whether you were right or not in this moment. So,
probably not.
So, he's essentially saying, you are heavily regulating our trade and we are okay with that. We have consented to that, but you can't do the taxing here, right? Like that's different. That's a separate thing. You can't have both, right? And so he had gone on to point out that the royal governors were often planted in America to make fortunes. And when they got rich, they'd return to Britain. And they didn't care about colonial welfare, and they didn't even care enough to report accurately what was happening in America.
Yeah.
And then Franklin warned, and this is so like premonition-esque. Franklin warned, if taxes were to be levied, pandemonium would ensue. He said it would be wise to consider what people were inclined to think, as well as how they ought to think, when considering imposing tax burdens on people.
Yeah. How a person should feel and how they're going to feel might not be the same if you don't think carefully, pumpkin.
Yeah. Which brings us back to 1763.
And the Sugar Act?
Kind of. So this is where the 7 Years' War ends, right? Mm-hmm. And Hutchinson started writing his book. Otis is elected to the Massachusetts House. And Grenville is the new prime minister over in Britain, new prime minister who wants to prove himself. And so he comes up with this thing called the Sugar Act, which will cut the duty on sugar in half if it's from a British importer, right? But it's basically the Molasses Act in a trench coat. And now
it's going to be enforced and you can't smuggle around it.
Heavily enforced. And maybe we'll talk more about that next time. We'll see. We'll see where my research takes me. I never know what I'm going to talk about until
we're never
going to
get to the Sugar Act. Also, I think we had a Rushless episode. I don't think we mentioned Benjamin Rush once.
Bummer.
But we're also talking about things that were happening a little before Benjamin Rush's career was really going on.
Right.
We're still building to it. All right.
But we'll get there. We'll get there. So thank you all for listening to Founded. I hope you found something interesting. Drop an email at foundedhistory@gmail.com and let me know what you want to find out next. And next time, we might talk about the Sugar Act. Still can't guarantee that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a rating. Also, go check out Bibliophage and Childproof. We'll see you next time. Well,
bye.
You'll see us. Bye.